In a world where silence can be shattered in seconds and borders bend under the pressure of decisions made behind closed doors, history is not written by the cautious. It is written by those who move with purpose, precision, and courage. This is not just a report. This is a lesson in resolve, reaction, and the anatomy of leadership when the storm arrives. War zones reveal more than politics. They expose purpose. When the strike came, it wasn't merely metal against metal. It was vision colliding with resistance, fear against focus, noise against preparation. And when the world paused to watch, when the sky lit up and missiles crossed borders, that's when the question emerged, are you ready when the pressure rises? This wasn't about who struck first. It was about who refused to be defined by uncertainty. Because the difference between chaos and clarity is not chance. It's character. Nations don't rise because they wish. They rise because they will. When the radar beeped and intelligence streamed in, decisions had to be made in seconds. Just like in life, the luxury of time disappears when the moment demands action, and that is the moment where most fold. But the leaders, the ones who are built different, they calculate, they act, they own the outcome. This wasn't just about defending land. It was about defending purpose. Because in every life, in every mission, you reach a moment when backing down is easier, but rising up is necessary. No one is born ready. Readiness is forged. It's forged in failure, in sweat, in silence, in strategy. So when you see that video footage, don't just see a military operation. See the metaphor. For your life, your journey, your inner war. Ask yourself, when pressure rises, do you fire excuses or do you launch action? In every moment of high stakes, when the air becomes heavy with anticipation and the world seems to hang in suspense, there is one rare quality that separates those who merely react from those who rise: clarity. When Israel launched its calculated strike deep within Iranian territory, the world witnessed more than a military event. It was a masterclass in clarity under pressure. The region was already tense, the skies already thick with threats, and the political atmosphere was fogged with uncertainty. And yet, in the heart of that chaos, a decision was made, not driven by panic, not dictated by fear, but sharpened by purpose. Clarity is not silence. It's not a lack of movement. Clarity is action without noise. It is momentum without confusion. And in your life, just like on the global stage, there will come moments when your peace will be disrupted, your boundaries tested, and your comfort zones obliterated. The question is, will you see clearly through the smoke? The truth is, chaos is a given. Every war zone has it. Every crisis, personal or political, is defined by it. The world doesn't offer quiet paths for dreamers. It throws storms, uncertainty, and distraction at anyone who dares to move with purpose. Clarity isn't something you find in still waters. It's forged when everything is on fire and you still know exactly where you're headed. Imagine the decision makers in a command center, watching live feeds, listening to conflicting reports, seeing dozens of outcomes unfold in real time, and yet a plan is set in motion. That's clarity, not the absence of alternatives, but the courage to choose one path and walk it fully. It's not just military doctrine, it's a metaphor for your own crossroads. When doubt rises, people freeze. When chaos reigns, people scatter. But when you have clarity of mission, of values, of identity, you move like lightning. And not because everything is perfect, but because you've trained your mind to filter out the noise and focus on the essential. That's the secret behind every great leader, every turning point in history, and every personal victory you've ever witnessed. But here's the truth: most people avoid clarity isn't given. It's earned in silence, in study, in preparation, in failure. It's the reward for those who spend years sharpening their instincts, building mental discipline, and staying committed when no one is watching. Just like intelligence officers who map targets in the dark, you don't gain clarity by luck. You build it when others are asleep. Think about your own life. Your battles, your decisions, your ambitions. The world around you won't stop being loud. There will always be critics, always be distractions, always be another headline, another emergency, another reason to delay. And if you wait for silence before you act, you'll die waiting. But if you learn to see clearly through the noise, you'll move like a force of nature. And that's the difference between a moment of reaction and a moment of destiny. When that video footage played, it showed more than missiles. It showed alignment, precision, intention. It showed what happens when people don't just respond, they lead. And leadership is clarity under the weight of chaos. Clarity is not knowing everything. It's knowing what matters. In the thick of confusion, it means asking, what is my mission? What are my principles? What are the consequences of inaction? Because most people don't fail from a lack of resources. They fail from a lack of focus. They crumble not because the storm is stronger, but because they never trained their eyes to see through the storm. And the most dangerous moment in any crisis is not the chaos itself. It's when you forget who you are in the middle of it. The moment you lose your direction. But if you stay rooted in purpose, if you hold fast to your code, if you keep your internal compass calibrated, then even in the middle of the world's loudest moments, you will act with the calm of a mountain. So when you watch conflict unfold, don't just see war, see wisdom. See that clarity is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is the difference between hesitation and action, between survival and leadership, between making history and being swallowed by it. And if you want to rise, if you want to lead, if you want to live a life that means something, then learn to see through the noise. Because clarity over chaos is not just a principle, it is a mindset, it is a weapon, and it is yours to wield. When the sirens go off, it's already too late to prepare. The strike has already been launched, the decision's already made, the course already set. That is the brutal truth. In war, in life, in leadership, preparation is not something you do in the moment. It is what you do long before the moment comes. And when you witness the footage of a high-stakes military operation like the Israeli strike on Iranian infrastructure, you are not just watching missiles, you're watching months, years, sometimes decades of preparation unfold in mere seconds. People often ask how a nation moves so decisively, so effectively in a time of chaos. The answer is never improvisation. The answer is never panic. The answer is never luck. The answer is always preparation. The strike you saw wasn't built overnight. It was the product of planning rooms lit by fluorescent lights at 2 a.m., analysts poring over data, simulations run hundreds of times, and boots on the ground rehearsing every possibility before reality ever demanded it. That's not reaction, that's readiness. Now bring that to your life. In a world addicted to urgency, to shortcuts, to instant answers, most people never build the discipline of preparation. They wait for the crisis. They wait for the deadline. They wait for life to punch them before they even put their hands up. And then they wonder why they break. But the ones who thrive, the ones who rise when everything falls, they have already been training while others were resting. They've already been strengthening their minds, sharpening their skills, and running the mental drills to face what others fear. Panic is loud, it's erratic, it makes you feel alive, until it makes you pay. Panic is what happens when you meet the moment with nothing but adrenaline and hope. But preparation is quiet, it's methodical, it's often boring. It demands consistency, humility, and repetition. But when the test comes, preparation becomes power. It becomes speed. It becomes certainty. That's what the world saw when the operation unfolded. A nation that had drilled so many times that when the time came, execution looked effortless. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your training. It's true in combat. It's true in crisis. It's true in life. And you have to ask yourself, am I building my readiness or am I gambling on hope? Because when your moment comes, and it will, there won't be time to wish you had trained more, learned more, prepared better. The enemy doesn't wait for your confidence. The storm doesn't pause until you're ready. It comes, it hits, and exposes who's been building in silence and who's been bluffing in the spotlight. Think about the minds behind the mission. Do you think they waited for a headline to wake up? Do you think they Googled solutions when it was already too late? No. They operated from preparation. They didn't move with emotion. They moved with execution. And that's what powerful people do. They build routines before the pressure comes. They master skills before they're required. They ask the hard questions when no one's looking. So they have real answers when everyone's watching. And here's the hardest part. Preparation is invisible. Until it's not. It's the hours you put in when there's no applause. It's the sweat you pour into your craft when no one believes in it yet. It's the strategy you sharpen when everyone else is celebrating. That's the cost. That's the grind. And that's why most people will never touch greatness. Because they only move when the fire starts, instead of building fireproof foundations long before the flame. But if you decide, truly decide, to prepare not for comfort but for confrontation, not for ease but for elevation, you will walk into every challenge armed with confidence, not fear. The world will try to rattle you. Situations will escalate. Pressure will find you. But you'll stand firm. Because you'll know, this isn't the first time you've been here. Even if it's the first time the world is watching. When Israel launched that mission, it wasn't improvisation, it was orchestration. And when your time comes, the world won't care about your potential. It will measure your performance. That's why preparedness beats panic every time. Because when the stakes rise, your future won't belong to who wants it most. It will belong to who trained for it best. Boldness alone is not enough. History is littered with the graves of the bold who moved without thinking, who struck without planning, who mistook noise for strength. The true power, the kind that shifts borders, changes narratives, and defines futures, lies in calculated boldness. Not reckless bravery, not blind aggression, but action measured by intelligence, driven by clarity, executed with precision. That's what the world saw when Israel moved against Iran in a moment that shook the region and captured global attention. It wasn't a display of power for power's sake. It was a message, a decision, a movement rooted in thought, in timing, in readiness. It was bold, yes, but it was calculated, and that is why it was effective. Calculated boldness is the quality that changes lives. It is the discipline of waiting for the right moment and then striking with full force. It is the restraint to prepare, the wisdom to observe, the courage to act, and the strength to follow through without hesitation. And in every great act of leadership, whether on the battlefield or in your personal journey, this kind of boldness is what draws the line between failure and transformation. People think power is loud. They think dominance is a show. But real power doesn't perform, it executes. Real power doesn't make noise, it makes impact. When Israel made its move, there was no improvisation, there was intelligence, logistics, timing, a chain of events so meticulously planned that the result looked sudden to the outside world. But inside, it had been in motion for months. That's what calculated boldness looks like. It's invisible until it's undeniable. Most people are either paralyzed by fear or intoxicated by urgency. They wait too long, second-guessing themselves into irrelevance, or they jump too soon, acting without awareness, burning bridges and collapsing under the weight of their own mistakes. But the few who rise, the few who earn influence, who seize rare opportunities, are the ones who know when to wait and when to strike. That's not instinct. That's trained boldness. That's what turns pressure into precision. Imagine living your life with that kind of energy. Not frantic, not desperate, but deliberate and dangerous in the best way. Imagine walking into your career, your relationships, your destiny with the discipline to plan deeply and the confidence to act swiftly. That's not arrogance, that's authority earned through study, struggle, and strategic thinking. That's the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. It simply shows up and changes the room. Every mission, every movement of consequence carries risk. But there's a difference between risking everything and calculating what you're willing to risk. The first is reckless, the second is revolutionary. You don't need to know everything before you act. But you do need to know yourself, your goal, and the battlefield you're stepping into. Whether you're launching a business, confronting a truth, ending a toxic pattern, or facing your own fears, boldness without strategy is a grenade with no target. But boldness with calculation, that's a missile guided by purpose. What we witnessed in that moment of geopolitical tension wasn't a wild gamble. It was an expression of sovereign will, executed with such clarity that the world couldn't ignore it. It wasn't an act born from chaos, but from structure. And it delivered a message not just to Iran, but to the world. Preparation without boldness is safe but stagnant. Boldness without thought is dangerous but empty. Only the fusion of the two creates undeniable force. Now ask yourself, where are you playing it safe when you should be striking? Where are you hesitating because you're afraid of being wrong? Because here's the truth, you will never be 100% ready. But with the right mindset, the right data, the right instincts, you can be ready enough to move. You can be bold without being blind. You can take the shot and own the outcome, not as a victim of pressure, but as a master of your mission. Calculated boldness means knowing when to move, how hard to hit, and what you're willing to stand for when the noise rises. It means no longer asking for permission from fear, no longer waiting for the perfect moment. Because the perfect moment is the one you choose. When you've done the work, when you know your purpose, and when you step forward not because it's easy, but because it's necessary, that is how power moves. That is how impact begins. Silence is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not fear. Silence is discipline. Silence is control. Silence is strength. In a world addicted to noise, where every movement is live streamed, every emotion tweeted, and every decision debated in real time, the most powerful force is not the one shouting from the rooftops. It's the one moving in silence while the world is distracted. That's exactly what we witnessed in the prelude to the Israeli strike on Iranian targets. Not a parade of words, not a flood of headlines, just quiet movement, strategic alignment, focused intensity, and then impact. The silence before the operation was not accidental. It was tactical. And it is this restraint, this mastery of stillness, that should inspire you more than any explosion on the screen. Because in your own life, silence is your most underrated weapon. You do not need to announce your progress. You do not need to explain your every step. You do not need to convince the world of your readiness. You need only to prepare, to build, to watch. And when the moment comes, execute. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most prepared. The most visible is rarely the most dangerous. The most talked about is rarely the most capable. Why? Because strength isn't proven by noise. It's revealed by results. Silence is what allows vision to sharpen. It's what allows discipline to grow. It's what creates the space for mastery. There is a reason elite forces train in secret. There is a reason successful people work behind closed doors. There is a reason powerful decisions are made before the cameras ever roll, because silence creates pressure, it builds suspense. And when the action comes, it hits harder because no one saw it coming. That's not manipulation, that's strategy. That's the ability to hold back when the world tells you to react, to choose privacy over popularity, to choose precision over performance. We live in an age that tells you to broadcast everything, to share every goal before it's earned, to speak before you've listened. But silence will always outlast the trends. It is in silence that the most important decisions are made. It is in silence that the most intense battles are won. The mind becomes stronger in silence. Focus becomes clearer in silence. Strategy is born in silence. And only the strong can remain still when the world demands movement. The Israeli operation did not begin when the first missile launched. It began in silence, in intelligence briefings, in encrypted channels, in data feeds scanned line by people trained not to seek applause, but to pursue precision. This is not just military protocol. This is a life principle. Your best work will be invisible until it's undeniable. Your deepest progress will be silent until it speaks louder than words. That is the kind of power no one can fake. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need approval, it just is. And when you master silence, you become unshakable. The opinions of others begin to fade. The need for attention begins to vanish. You stop explaining yourself and start elevating yourself. While others react, you prepare. While others post, you plan. While others seek comfort in visibility, you find confidence in solitude. That's where resilience is built. That's where the future is shaped, not in public moments, but in private resolve. Every moment you stay silent when you could boast. Every hour you choose preparation over performance. Every time you hold your vision close instead of throwing it to the crowd, you gain power. You gain control, because silence is not absence, it is presence. Concentrated, focused, disciplined presence. It means you are no longer a slave to reaction. You are the author of intention. And when the moment finally arrives, when you launch, when you speak, when you act, the impact will be amplified by every second you spent in silence. Because you will not just act, you will arrive fully prepared, fully aligned, fully earned, and no one will ask you to explain, because real power doesn't have to speak loudly. It speaks once, and the whole world listens. So do not be afraid to go silent. Do not be afraid to disappear from the noise. The most dangerous thing you can do is to keep building while no one is watching. Because silence is not the absence of power. It is the preparation of it. There is a moment after impact. After the first strike, after the blast. After the world holds its breath and the dust begins to settle. That moment doesn't belong to the attacker. It belongs to the one who responds. That's when true character is revealed. Not in the heat of aggression, but in the clarity of reaction. Because you don't control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. And that response, more than anything else, defines who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going. In the aftermath of Israel's targeted strike on Iran, the spotlight did not stay on the warplanes or the command rooms. It shifted, as it always does, to the response. How would Iran respond? Would it escalate? Would it retreat? Would it mobilize in rage or restrain with calculation? The world watched not to see who struck first, but to see who would shape what came next. And this is the lesson: your power is not just in the punch, it's in the poise. Your influence is not just in the attack, it's in the answer. This is true of nations, this is true of people. Anyone can react in anger. Anyone can panic under pressure. Anyone can mirror the chaos thrown at them. But the ones who rise, the ones who shape events instead of becoming victims of them, they don't react, they respond. With intelligence, with intent, with unshakable clarity of purpose. That's not weakness, that's higher level strength. In your life, things will hit you without warning. Betrayal, criticism, failure. The missiles may not be literal, but the impact is just as real. And in those moments, the question isn't what happened. The question is what now? Will you let the hit define you? Or will you define what comes next? That is the moment of power. That is the battlefield of character. Because anyone can throw punches, but only a few can take them and turn them into a plan. There's a reason military leaders, elite athletes, and top-level CEOs all speak in the same language. Not of chaos, but of control. Because response is about ownership. It's about refusing to become a slave to the situation. It's about stepping into the role of architect, not just survivor. That's why your response matters. That's why it becomes your signature. It's the clearest message you'll ever send to the world. I may not control the storm, but I control the ship. Look again at the aftermath of the Israeli strike. Look at how global players assessed the situation, weighed the response, and considered the broader consequences. It wasn't about revenge, it was about direction. Diplomats moved quietly. Intelligence channels buzzed. Military units adjusted posture not in rage but in readiness. Because the goal was never just retaliation. The goal was strategic positioning. That's what powerful people do. They don't flinch at the first hit. They position. They respond. They make the next move count more than the last one hurt. And in your life, that's where your future is written. Not in the pain you experience, but in the posture you adopt. Do you take the hit and collapse? Or do you absorb, breathe, and recalibrate? Do you lose your focus the moment something goes wrong? Or do you learn, adjust, and return stronger than before? Your response is your mirror. It tells you exactly where you are mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And more than anything, it tells others what kind of leader you are, even if you lead no one but yourself. Because people will watch how you respond more than they'll listen to what you say. They'll learn from how you carry yourself under pressure. They'll remember how you chose grace over panic, action over excuses, and clarity over chaos. And that memory, it's your legacy. Built not in the moments when things go right, but in the storms that try to break you. Your greatness isn't proven by how hard you can hit. It's proven by how powerfully you respond after you've been hit. You can't always predict the impact, but you can always prepare your response. And that is the most liberating, empowering truth you can carry. Because it means your story is not written by circumstance, it's written by character, not by what you faced, but by what you did next. In a world that rewards reaction, be the one who chooses response. In a world that moves fast, be the one who moves with meaning. And in a world that's full of noise, be the one who answers with purpose. Because your response will define you. Not just in the headlines of today, but in the history of who you become. And so as the world watches, breath held, eyes wide, opinions loud, let us step back and recognize the deeper current flowing beneath the headlines, beneath the flashpoints, beneath the sound and fury of conflict. What we have witnessed in this moment of international confrontation between Israel and Iran, between strategy and ideology, between deterrence and provocation is not just military choreography. It is not just geopolitics. It is not merely war. It is a profound reminder of something timeless and universal, that in every generation power is tested, leadership is revealed, and character is defined not in peace but in pressure. In crisis, masks fall. In crisis, clarity rises. And leadership, real leadership, is forged in the fire of decision. Not the kind of leadership that shouts from podiums or rides on popularity, but the kind that takes responsibility before the outcome is even known. Because when everything is at stake, you can no longer afford to be vague. You must step into the storm and claim your role, not as a spectator, not as a victim, but as a commander of your own principles. That is where all leadership begins, not with comfort, but with courage under pressure. And if you dare to be seen, if you choose to lead, then you must accept what comes with it. Visibility demands responsibility. Once you are visible, your actions carry weight beyond yourself. Your choices are no longer private. They are symbolic. They ripple outward. That is why the world does not just judge what you do. It watches how you do it. The cost of attention is accountability. The cost of power is restraint. And the cost of being first is being ready for fallout. You must ask yourself before every decision, just as this bold, but is this right? Because once you are seen, you become more than yourself, you become a standard. But boldness, real boldness is not showmanship, it is not volume, it is not chaos, it is calculation. The most powerful strikes in war and in life are those that are planned with precision and executed with discipline. Calculated boldness is the bridge between courage and consequence. It is the move made after long silence, the decision born of deep study. The moment you stop preparing and start moving, you don't need to be loud to be lethal. You don't need to be reckless to be remembered. Power is not in how fast you move. It's in how well you aim. Because once you strike, you change the landscape, and that moment must be earned. Which is why silence is not weakness. It is the source of all strength. What the world saw in the build-up to the Israeli strike, the stillness, the secrecy, the waiting, was not inaction. It was preparation. It was alignment. It was the calm before the storm, held not out of fear, but out of command. Silence is where decisions mature, where clarity sharpens, where ego dies and vision is born. The loudest people are often the most unprepared. The strongest, however, do not need to announce themselves. They are revealed in action. They do the work while others make noise. They speak when it's time to act, not before. And when the act is done, when the missiles fall, when the world trembles, what matters most is not who struck first, but who controls the next chapter. That is the defining truth of every battle. Your response defines you. You may not have chosen the conflict, but you choose what happens next. You choose the narrative. You choose whether to escalate or elevate, whether to retreat into fear or rise with purpose. You are never powerless as long as you own your response. It is the last form of freedom. It is the final form of strength. Because it is in your response, not your enemy's move, not the media's story, not the chaos around you, that your identity is decided. So what does this moment teach us? That leadership is not a title, it is a test. That power is not in presence, it is in poise. That boldness is not noise, it is the union of courage and calculation. That silence is not absence, it is alignment. And that response, not reaction, determines legacy. These truths are not just for nations. They are for you, for your life, for your choices, for the battles you face behind closed doors. Because whether your war is on a global scale or within your own mind, the principles remain unchanged. You will be tested. You will be misunderstood. You will be struck. And in that moment, the world may not notice you. But your response will speak. And it will speak forever. So respond wisely. Move with discipline. Lead with clarity, and never forget, this moment is not just history, it's a mirror.